Talk about an opening. I don't know how to follow that one too well, but welcome to ToutSuite Social Club, everybody, and a Friday night special show. We've got some great guests here. Aaron, Pott, hello, and Jennifer, what an opening. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
Cypress Quartet. I mean, we've got some winemakers, we've got some music makers. Today's about taste makers, maybe, or flavor makers. I don't know. Is that what we're doing?
Taste. It is about taste.
Oh, it's about taste.
James Brown.
Taste. I like it. Taste. All right, and we got to get some wine if we're going to taste anything. Right. So I'm going to throw some Zinfandel at us. What are they pouring for us real quick, Aaron?
So this is a Chester's Anvil Mead Ranch Zinfandel from 2011. It's one of those romantic blocks that has the wicked view of the entire San Francisco Bay Area. And it's in a little enclosure, a stone wall all the way around this little 2-acre vineyard up on the Jane Mead's ranch.
This is in Napa. We're not talking about France. We're not talking about Chateauneuf. No, there's actually still vineyards in Napa.
Old school Zinfandel on Atlas Peak. And Jane Mead is one of our great American poets, and her family's owned the property for ages. There's all sorts of crazy things up there, like the original stagecoach from the movie Stagecoach. All sorts of collectible items that you've never seen before. She's an amazing poet, amazing woman, and grows incredible grapes.
Oh my gosh. And this is what we're drinking. Oh my gosh. And to have something romantic and classic like this is really a nice way to kind of follow up with Jennifer just opened up. What were you playing, by the way? While we're drinking this wine, what are we pairing this wine with, by the way?
That was some music by Prokofiev. It was called March for Children. It's originally for piano, but a great cellist, a Russian cellist named Piatigorsky, transcribed it for cello. And actually, I call it Izzy's song. So Aaron has a daughter named Isolde. And for her third birthday, I think it was, yeah. I was playing for them, just because that's what I do. I go to their house and I play music and we drink wine and it's great.
That's all you do. You just wake up in the morning, you drive up Mount Veeder, you go to Aaron's house, you play some music, he gives you some wine.
She's my house cellist.
I am. He's my house winemaker. But I played this song and his daughter just loved it and she made me play it over and over again. So I call it Izzy's song.
That's a beautiful song. Thank you so much.
It has an extra joint in her little bum.
Really?
And, she's got a special dance to go with this song.
She likes to dance to that one, definitely.
Very cool. Very cool. Well, thank you both for being here. This is going to be absolutely a fantastic show. It's going to be a whole lot of fun. We've got great people in the audience. Hello, everybody. We've got a great audience. We're looking for everybody to log in tonight. Hopefully you're watching us live streaming. We'd love for you to log in. If not, always got to check out ToutSuite.com, check out our Facebook page. We're brought to you by 55 Degrees, so we want to make sure that everybody is participating tonight because this is really something special. This is Friday night. We've got some great wines. We've got more music to come.
That's right.
Thank you so very much. But actually, I really want to turn over the questions to you a little bit, because I've known Aaron for a little while. I've got some of the dirt on him, and I've got a few questions that I'm going to bring up that I've done my research on, but I'd love to see what you also probably having known him longer than I have, can bring up when it comes. And Aaron, same goes for you and Jen. I want to see what you guys have to say about each other.
I'd say before we get into any of that, I think we have to pay homage to this T-shirt.
Yes.
So Aaron is quite a zippy dresser, snappy, exciting dresser.
Some would say a bad dresser.
No, a great dresser.
I think John Consgard said I was the worst dresser besides Donald Runnacles.
And I had a question, which was, why do you always wear stripes? And he has some on here because he always does wear stripes. But today he wore a special T-shirt. So do you want to tell us about this?
Well, so this is Mandiba Man. It's a T-shirt of Nelson Mandela's that I got in 1997 when I was in South Africa.
Brand new.
And
Never worn it before.
I pulled it out because of the great man's death, and I want to say Pott Wine is against racism, is against homophobia, is against bad things of any kind. And mainly because there's this Italian bastard, and you know who you are, Fulvio Bressans, and we want to be not that guy.
There we go. So you're making a statement.
I'm making a statement. I'm making a statement.
I like that statement.
That's a big statement.
Everybody can do whatever they want. We're happy for them.
And I'm making a statement too.
Yeah, Pott Wine purple.
So I'm wearing this color, and I picked it without thinking about it, but this is the color of their theme color, Pott Wine purple.
I like
it. So happens they always wrap it. We see the top of the bottles, and it's a theme here. So.
Well, had I known any better, I'd have been wearing Pott Wine purple.
Yeah. There we go.
Color of royalty.
Next time.
Color of royalty.
Well, so I have a question.
Okay.
I'm gonna, after the T-shirt stuff, I'm gonna ask you a serious question, which is, so I started playing cello when I was 6, and I know you had an experience really early on of that sort of, I mean, maybe not 6, but you were a little bit older, which seems precocious to me for a winemaker. I read this online. I've never talked to you about it before, so can you tell us about that 9-year-old, I think 8 or 9-year-old experience?
I think we talked about this a little bit last time, but
okay.
When I was 9 years old, I was in a bistro in Paris, and it was my first night ever in Paris, and the waiter came up to ask me what I wanted to drink, and I said, "Can I have a glass of milk, please?" And he said, "Milk is for babies," and came back with a glass of wine. And it was at that moment that I realized that milk was not the thing that was going to get me beyond 9 years old.
You were never going to become a dairy farmer.
Yeah, you're 9 years old, you want to be an adult. So this is, true. I realized, okay, so this wine thing, this is what adults drink. This is my ticket to adultdom. So
see, precocious, I told you.
At that point, and it was prior to a trip that took me to a lot of wine regions in France and introduced me to a lot of wine producers. And at that moment, I said, I've got to take this wine thing and run with it. And where it took me was a bad place, I have to say. So the place where it took me first was, I was that annoying kid at the party, where in an era when everybody wanted to know about wine in the 70s, when I was growing up, every adult wanted to know about wine because it was that groovy James Bond thing that you had to know about the 53 Dom Perignon.
Oh, of course.
You had to know about the great wines, and so every adult wanted to know about those great wines. And I was that annoying kid that would say, "No, you're actually wrong. It's this, or that, or no, it's not that vintage. It's this." Okay. So.
Now, is it true that you also did like experiments with fermentation in your parents' garage?
Yeah, I think if anybody's living in my house in Oregon, where I grew up in Eugene, there's a very large stain in the closet, and I'm sorry for that.
I've also heard, going back to your childhood and wine, that your father was a really big Riesling fan. This guy's dad apparently really liked to, and not just Riesling. When I think of Riesling, you think about, old ladies buying Blue Nun sorts of Riesling, but really classic German Rieslings, with some age to them, and that they never ever seemed to be able to drink the entire bottle themselves. And that you had a tendency to wait until there was just the right amount left in the bottom, and then when they thought it was empty, you'd swipe it and you'd hide under the table and you'd drink the rest of it yourself.
Make my move, yeah.
Is this a true story that I heard?
Very, very true, yeah. My father did his postdoctorate work at Heidelberg. And was introduced to German wines at Heidelberg and fell in love with them and loved them all his life. In fact, on his deathbed, drank Spätlese from Josef Roche, 1999.
Wow.
So, yeah.
So your introduction was first from milk to red wine, but really by way of Rieslings, and Rieslings, unlike many other people, have gotten into the wine industry as a stepping stone, but you kind of started a little bit.
Yeah, and it's still one of my great loves. I love Riesling. I I love German wines. I love German Pinot Noir. I mean, I think there's a lot going on in Germany right now that's very interesting, and I think there's a lot to love there.
Very cool. Well, I'm going to ask you a question then.
Okay.
So we've got these very young introductions to a craft, you know, as, you know, creating wine from you being introduced to wine very young and then eventually rolling with that. What was your introduction then to the cello and to creating music?
No one said to me, you know, singing is for babies or anything like that. No. So like Aaron, I'm one of 4 children. Isn't it? We have that in common, among other things. But, and my 2 older brothers one played percussion and the second one wanted to play trumpet. My mother said, my mother's an opera singer, and she said, I don't want drums and trumpet in the same house. She said to my brother, please play the cello. She brought a cellist to the house. This woman played for us, all of us, and my brother ended up playing trumpet anyway, right? But I was 5 at the time, and I heard the cello, and I fell in love, and I begged for an entire year. Can you imagine a 5-year-old begging for an entire year every day? I want to play the cello, and they would say, no, you're too small, or you're not ready yet, or eventually they gave in. So there's your lesson.
But that's devotion. I mean, right. There was something in you that said
that sound. There was something about the sound that grabbed me, and now I went on to study piano and voice and theater and writing and all these other things. But cello was always there. I don't remember ever not playing cello.
Really? And you went to Juilliard,
I did go to Juilliard.
So we've got Juilliard, we've got Davis. I mean, you're talking about
Université de Bourgogne.
And the Bourgogne, okay.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I was in London too, so we both got some Europe.
So no, that's the thing is you've got rooted educations here in the United States, but also made sure that you both spent time venturing out.
Exactly.
And how would you say then, each one of you, one after the other, how having educations and experiences rooted here in the States and then taking that to Europe kind of started to evolve things for you? Because I know, you know, you came out of Davis, you went to work up at Newton, worked with John Kongsgaard, and then you went over to France. And when you finished up Juilliard, you ended up in
Fulbright to London. And then I also went back to I went back to Prague for a while too. Yeah.
So how would you say these things shaped your beliefs and where you are today in your respective crafts?
I mean, I think for both of us, it's sort of the font of what we do.
Right. It's true.
Winemaking really evolved in Europe. More than anywhere else, and became what it is today in a European context. And I think we have to always acknowledge that. We don't have to always drink that, but we have to always acknowledge that.
Right.
And we can always try new things, but and it's the same with music. You know, whether it starts in Bach's world or whatever, it's all European music that we started out with. They're great American composers, but today, but you know, I'm always looking back to that. And when I go to Europe, I find people are more used to seeing a cello walking down the street, well, with an owner. But cello's not on the thing.
I was going to say, are we talking about, what are you doing? Which part of Europe you're in, and what are you doing that you have cellos strolling down the street? I want to go there. Can we talk about this?
I'm more used to, you know, having someone say, oh, look at the cello on the street versus what is that, which is what kids hear us more often, or look at the guitar, which is what people here think it is.
Giant guitar.
Look at the big guitar, right? So there is that, you know, we have to pay homage to that, to honor where things came from. So.
Very cool, very cool. Well, we're at that fun little stage where it's time for some questions from the audience. So we have anybody here that has a question that they would love to ask either one of our guests?
Burning questions.
Burning questions. Come on, Natalie. Come on up, right over here. You got to get into the mic.
Oh, you're on the.
We're putting you on the spot. Hop in right here. Jump on the mic.
My goodness, putting the spot here.
Cheers.
So tell me about Pott wines. Tell me about Pott wines. Like where are the grapes grown?
The grapes are grown all over, and there's a lot of different sites in Napa Valley.
Okay.
The 2 wines we're drinking tonight are from St. Helena. And from Stagecoach Vineyard on Pritchard Hill. And mainly the focus of Pott Wine is to make wines from single vineyards and unique single vineyard sites. And one thing that really inspired me when I learned to speak French was the entry in the dictionary, the French dictionary, that was for Terroir. And the last entry, number 4 in the Larousse Dictionary for Terroir, says something to the effect that the area where an agricultural product is grown is affected by people and historical events that happened at that place. And I think there's a sort of spirit that inhabits a place. And I think that when I look around for sites, I look for that spirit in those sites and try to play off that spirit.
Interesting, whether it be your own or someone else that you're working for.
Yeah, exactly.
Very cool. Steve, we've got Steve on camera now. Hey, Steve. How's it going, buddy? Since you're logged on, do you have a question for our guest? Oh, what are you drinking?
What is he drinking?
07 Neruda.
Wow, that's a good one.
Very cool. You have sound?
Steve's mute.
Steve, wow.
Unmute yourself.
Where are you, Steve?
I think you might have muted yourself there, Steve. Because you can hear us, but we can't hear you. Okay.
Anybody read lips?
Okay. I'm so sorry we can't get you a question. Shoot it in on our comments. We want you to stay logged on. Get it in our comments because we want to answer every question that you have, okay? So we don't want to leave anybody out in this situation. And actually, it was a great segue into Pott wines, by the way. So we're not just drinking Chester's Anvil.
Toast.
So what is this first Pott wine that I'm pouring?
So this is called La Carte et le Territoire, and it means the map and the territory. And it's from a vineyard in St. Helena called the Young Inglewood Vineyard. And it's a vineyard owned by the Young family, farmed by Steve Mathiasen. And a great vineyard, gravel bench land. And that's one of the reasons it's called La Carte et le Territoire, the map and the territories, because St. Helena is an appellation that kind of gets a bad name, I think.
Really?
And we all have heard about the Rutherford bench and the Oakville bench, and they're very popular. But St. Helena is a massive appellation that has the same soil structure as both Oakville and Rutherford. And there are all sorts of wonderful sites in St. Helena, but unfortunately, the price of real estate in St. Helena is so ridiculous that nobody can afford to keep vineyards in there. In fact, there was a total tragedy in St. Helena. I thought it was a tragedy. It wasn't earth-shattering or anything. But I saw a house in St. Helena where they took out an acre of vineyard and built a garage and a swimming pool in an acre of old vine Cabernet right nearby Spotswood. And I thought, this person had something that was unique in the world and built a swimming pool and a garage. And I thought, you could park your fancy car on the street and go to Meadowood and go swimming.
I was like to say, it's not between Hells and Meadowood. There's not a shortage of places to go swimming.
Right?
And,
I would have driven his car on the weekend.
I'm sure we could have all found a rotation that car never would have been not taken care of. So
we were talking about the name of that. Could we talk a little bit about, you have unusual names for your wines.
Yeah.
Yes.
Her
beautiful.
Majesty's Secret Service.
Yeah.
Maybe you can tell us, and there are some other great ones that you have.
So first I have to say La Carte et le Territoire. It's in homage to writer Michel Houellebecq, who's a French writer, whom don't judge me by reading his work. I have to first give you that because he's a very queer writer, but a very good writer. And it's also a book by his. It's also recently a book by Alan Greenspan. So, The Map and the Territory.
Right.
Okay.
But our guy is Michel Houellebecq. Her Majesty's Secret Service, the block is called M5. We thought MI5.
Perfect, yeah.
But also because my wife Claire, her father was worked for GCHQ, the Government Communication Headquarters, and worked for Her Majesty's Secret Service and has all these weird slides of Tehran in the 50s. And,
Don't talk about this.
Secrets that we can't reveal on the internet.
Well, not until we've had more wine.
Right, with a lot more wine.
Plus, I like the idea of service, the wine service. And I like Her Majesty. She's a very nice girl.
I know. You have sometimes a model of her on that.
Yes. Tchotchkes are important for winemaking.
I've noticed that.
We have to have little
Are they
things
lucky,
on our
or are they
tents.
just entertainment, or
Entertainment.
Yeah. That's good.
And lucky sometimes.
Do they actually get to dip into the wine ever?
No.
You don't leave her floating in the wine.
No.
But there are some other unusual names.
But yeah, and
but you love words. I know this about you. You love to read, and you love to think about things, and there are always multiple meanings behind the names of wine.
Yes. Yeah. And often just ridiculously dumb jokes, too.
Oh, okay. Come on.
and I want to bring that back while we're on the topic of names to the Chester's Anvil. And just to kind of real quick, so we don't skip over it, to talk about Chester's Anvil and where that name came from and what that is.
Association with Carolina.
Yeah, that's a very good story. So Chester's Anvil it's part of Mount Veeder lore. We live up on Mount Veeder, and we live next door to Steve Legier and Carol Meredith, who own Legier Meredith Wines. And Carol Meredith is the uber professor of genetics that discovered where all the origins of grapevine varietals came from, what crosses became those grape varietals. And she's debunked a lot of history made up by French marketing people many moons ago, and has created a lot of new ideas and given us a lot more insight into wine from her research. Amazing woman. Steve Legier was a winemaker at Robert Mondavi Winery and gave me my first job in the wine industry.
What was that?
As an intern during the time I was at UC Davis, working in the lab at Robert Mondavi Winery, which was very cool because at the time they were constantly tasting everybody else's wines. So you could kind of wander into the tasting room and taste whatever was in there. And sometimes there was a 47 Cheval Blanc in there. Sometimes there was a ridiculously great Burgundy in there. And then you would have to take those wines, not only taste them, but take them and do the analysis on them.
I just have a quick question, and I apologize, I lost it, but the question was in the order of, is there a wine that brings a lot of memory? Is there a wine that, it's be so memorable, maybe that, why you went into the business, or something that was really special for you? So, I'm sorry, I lost the tweet somewhere. I don't know how to use it, and I just read it very quickly.
You look familiar.
DDA, everybody.
So, is there a wine that's? I think so many wines are mnemonic. I think that wine. That's one of the things about wine that's incredible. And I think, all you have to do is read Remembrance of Things Past to experience all the amazing things that come back to you when you try a wine. And I think so many different wines.
Music. That's like music.
So
you hear music?
Well,
just earlier we were talking about that, right?
Exactly.
This is when I was driving and...
No, it's one of these things where Aaron is making an amazing point right now, where when you have a particular a wine that you taste, even though every bottle is different, there are pieces of that wine that when you drink it a couple months after the first time you had it, it brings back those memories. And then it brings back even maybe hints of that terroir. If you were ever lucky enough to stand in the vineyard where that wine was grown, or the winery where that wine was produced.
Just to dumb it down massively, the greatest film version of this is in Ratatouille, when the critic Anton Ego tastes the Ratatouille.
Yes, and he's
immediately transported back
to a little boy.
His mom cooking for him.
And it's the same way with music. I can remember my father when I was a kid telling me, all of a sudden a song would come on the radio and he goes, the first time I heard this song, I was standing here talking to your mom doing this. And I was just kind of like, wow. And, segue, use a musical term, that into maybe a wine or a piece of music that you kind of have that momentous occasion with.
Yeah, it's funny. There are things that will just completely bring. I'll hear something I haven't thought about for a while or performed in a while, and I'll sit down in a rehearsal, and I will see the room where I was rehearsing it last. It may have been 20 years ago.
Wow.
But I can envision and almost just smell that room even still, and the feeling. I'll have some of the same feelings, except I'm a different person and cellist now. So I'm like, okay, wait, that was then. We'll put that memory aside, and now I'm here. I'm standing here now, and my next memory will be of now. Of this moment now when I'm playing it. So it's.
But does that memory, because you recognize it and you're building the new one, but does that influence how
I play it?
Yeah.
Absolutely, because you bring all of the stories from the past with you. And it's like, oh, when I played this last, I was playing with this person, and this person has now passed away, and let me think about their legacy, or what they told me, the stories they told me. I mean, it's amazing what will jog your memory.
So
you never remember.
In essence, then, music has its own terroir. It may not necessarily be from the sunlight or from the soil, but it has its emotions, it has its people, it has its vibrations that really kind of influence.
And you can even feel, how you were feeling at that time when you were playing. I can feel like an 18-year-old again when I play a certain piece of music.
Wow.
Play that one again.
It was just last year.
Really? What was the piece? Come on. Oh, no, we gotta go on. If we're gonna open up that can of worms, we gotta keep going.
No, I think it was some Schubert. I don't know. I was playing a lot of music when I was 18.
Something that I saw actually in your notes, I cheated a little bit,
That's okay.
and something, since we're talking about Mount Veeder and the community that you have up there, Pott Wine's coming from, or Chester's Anvil, excuse me, working with your neighbors. There's something that is Chateauneuf du Pott, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, which is my house.
Legendary.
And this house is legendary.
It is legendary.
Yeah, maybe.
There's a Schloss.
Yeah, there is a
There's
Schloss.
a Schloss, so the outer building is called
Yeah,
the
it's
Schloss.
it's a good place to have a party, and it has a nice view, and it's a great place to grow grapes.
Oh my gosh.
So I make a wine out of there that's very small production, but that's called the Incubo, and it comes from a small vineyard in the front part of the house.
Is that up to a barrel yet or not? Not
No,
yet a barrel.
always a half barrel.
But it's a good half a barrel.
It's a good half barrel.
Wow, I'm honored that I've had that.
Next
There's such a small
year,
production of that. Wow.
next year we will release. We will have wines from off of the rest of the property. We have 5 more acres on the rest of the property.
That have been planted.
Some Merlot, Cabernet Franc, Cabernet Sauvignon, and a tiny amount of Viognier.
Really? Yeah. Viognier from Mount Veeder. That sounds fun. You're going to get to really experiment with that. DJ, do you have any more questions?
One more question to finish up this segment here. And from Robert Cusick.
Oh, no.
First of all, beautiful scarf. You really enjoy that.
This is for Robert.
But also, what is your favorite vineyard?
What is my favorite vineyard? The world over?
That's dangerous.
Well, I don't know. Maybe both.
Politically dangerous.
Yes, in Napa or in the world.
That's a really hard question because that could change every single day. But yeah, that's a hard question. I mean, I have to say, there's a vineyard in Burgundy that I have a great affinity with because I did a lot of my master's work there, which is called Les Amoureuses. And that's a beautiful, beautiful vineyard. I love my Incubo. It's dear to my heart, and I work in it the most. But yeah, that's a difficult question. I couldn't say. There's so many great vineyards in the world.
Well, when you say you work a little bit more in Incubo, what are you doing there that you're not doing in other vineyards?
I mean, I do all the farming in that vineyard. So from pruning to all the treatments, everything I do by hand.
Is it kind of your meditation then?
Precisely.
Where there are days you just walk out with your clippers and you may just start pruning a section.
Yes, and if I had my way, I think I would just be a Mexican vineyard worker.
Really?
I think it's a really nice life.
With the impact that you have had on Napa Valley wines, and some people in the Wall Street Journal called you the mouth of Napa Valley, and I don't think that was in the sense of being boisterous, but in the sense of flavor profile and palate and things like that. Really?
I love being out in the sunshine. I love pruning. I think it's an artful it's a very artful thing to do. I love communing with the vines, seeing the wildlife. It's beautiful.
I love one of your mentors, John Kongsgaard, used to say all the time that I'm just a farmer. He'd say that, and I was always like amazed by that idea. But I think that speaks to that.
Yeah,
it's like,
and he's a good farmer.
He's a good farmer.
He also has amazing
farmer.
shirts, by the way.
Yes.
All right. Do we have any more questions from the audience? We have a very quiet audience. I mean, we've got Guinness being consumed and plenty of wine. How are we so quiet back here?
I have a question.
You have to come up here.
All
You
right.
can't ask a question from the back. You have to stand here.
So I'm wondering what your favorite varietal is. Do you have a first and second? Because I'm sure you have an obvious first and a sneaky second, maybe.
Ooh.
No, that's a tough question because there are days, varietals are so associated with where they're grown, and I mean you can have a Cabernet Franc from a great piece of ground in Saint-Emilion that's fantastic, and then you can have a Cabernet Franc from some dumpy place in
Sure. So
Lodi that's
what about a
terrible.
go-to? A go-to?
Yeah, no, that's hard. That's a hard one too. I think I love the right vine varietals. I love Cabernet Franc. I love Merlot. Those are they really speak to me. It's also trying to get rid of my demons from working 6 years in Saint-Emilion and having a lot of demons to get rid of. But I love working with Cabernet Franc and Merlot.
Is there a varietal you don't prefer as much?
No, I mean I think it's like cooking. You have if it's well made, it's going to be you're going to like it.
Sure.
And there's always in any wine region, there's always the one enlightened crazy person that's making great wine no matter where you are. So, and I like unique, I like different, I like funky. But you can find that wherever.
Something special.
Yeah.
Well, in that sense, since you talk about varietals, are there composers or pieces, maybe a particular area that you tend to gravitate to when you're maybe meditating and you just need to start playing, or when you're really trying to, stretch your...
It's funny. I get asked that question a lot. Like, who's your favorite composer? What's your favorite grape? It's like asking somebody which is their favorite child if they have a bunch of children. It's a little touchy question. But I always come back to Bach. I always come back to Beethoven. I spend, the last 17 years of my life, I've spent a lot of time in Beethoven's music, and it's just so rich, and you just want to keep coming back to it and looking at it from a different angle, and I'm always learning from it. So I think that's what's exciting about it to me. But I'm also interested in what's new out there too.
Jennifer has a relationship with Beethoven.
I do. I consider him a friend. He's a good friend of mine, and sometimes we argue. But
isn't that part of what your quartet does? Don't you have the call and answer with composers to take themes and go out there and say, hey, composers that are out there, this is a theme that we're working with.
Right.
Come back. We want to work with you, and that's something.
Well, and to bring what this format, our music of our time to today. So we're looking back, but we're bringing it to now. So that when 200 years from now, people are looking at what we were doing artistically, they have something to look at. Oh, this is how they're responding to the world today.
Very cool.
That's interesting. I don't know if you can do that with wine. It doesn't really last that long, 200 years. Do you think Pott wines will be around 200 years from now?
I hope so.
We'll be drinking them all. There won't be enough.
Well, I mean, we just found a wine cellar that was 37,000 years old. It was BC. They said that it was.
But were you drinking it?
In Israel.
In Israel, yeah.
Yes, extraordinary story.
Making some salad
Really
dressing?
I mean, and but we're talking about music, and you play a cello that's over 300 years old.
Yeah, I know. It's amazing. That the cello was made like as Bach was writing his pieces for.
The one you just played?
The one I just played.
Wow.
1701. Yeah.
That's
So,
amazing.
I don't know. There's a lot of history, mixed in with today. I think that's another thing we have in common. People are still making instruments the way they did in the 1600s. People are making wines. I don't know how much has changed and what you're doing, but yeah. So
not much has changed. I mean, I think wine is still
you
made.
have better gear.
I think wine's made in the same way it was made when the Gauls invented the barrel.
Oh, there you go.
Pre-Roman Gauls.
Well, and people making cellos today are still putting the purfling into the,
Right.
in the same way. And they still have the pots of glue. Apparently, if Stradivarius came back to life today, he could go into an instrument maker shop and make a violin.
Really?
Because they'd still do it.
He'd never have a question of.
Well, he might be like, "What's that computer thing over there?"
Right, but he'd had everything he needs.
Right, exactly.
Another question.
The wine we're drinking now, what is the blend of that wine?
It's La Carte le Territoire is 30% Cabernet Franc and 70% Merlot.
And you've worked with that vineyard for some time, or is it?
Yeah, a few years. We started making this wine in 2009. And it's a beautiful older vine vineyard. I have 3 rows there. 2 of the rows are Merlot, and 1 of the rows is Cabernet Franc. And then Young Inglewood makes their own wines from the vineyard, which are fantastic as well. So.
And the vineyard's been there for a while.
It's been there for a while, yeah.
Beautiful wine.
It's pretty. Yeah.
And one other quick thing. Who was Chester?
Okay, so Chester is Chester Brandlin. And the Brandlin family owned essentially all of Mount Veeder at one point in time. And Chester died last year. But before he died, he had a small patch of Zinfandel that he still had. He sold his ranch to Cuvée. And he had this small patch of Zinfandel. It was 2 acres. And one day he called us up on the phone and said, I'm just too old to do the work in here. Can you guys help me out? And so we, being good neighbors, Steve and I went over there and helped Chester out. And it was very entertaining. He was a very funky guy and had a lot of weird things to say that freaked us out some days. But we went over there and helped him out. And at the end of that year, he gave us the grapes. And that's how Chester's Anvil started. The reason it's called Chester's Anvil is he also had this barn that was filled with all of this junk. And every time we would go over there, he would try to give us stuff from out of this barn. And the first thing he gave us was this 19th century anvil. And the second thing he gave us was this old 19th century plow. And so we thought, should we call it Chester's Anvil or Chester's Plow? And then we thought, well, we could, the motto of Chester's Plow could be get plowed on the plow, or we could say get hammered on the anvil.
You have this anvil at home, I'm guessing?
Yes, yeah. So Steve Legier has it and uses it. Mm-hmm. And not only does he use it whenever we go to tastings, he brings it along with him. And if you've ever met Steve Legier, his arms are bigger than my legs. So he's very strong. Yeah.
Yes. And it's funny because some of the other wines in Chester's Anvil actually refer to anvil-like crafts.
Yes. Everything in the Chester's Anvil world, all the blends are either from blacksmith shops or have something to do with metallurgy.
Boy.
So we were talking at some point, and you were telling me you have these 4 tenets of Pott Wine, and I found that really interesting because I'd never heard you talk about that before. Could you tell us?
Oh yeah, let me see if I can.
The 4 tenets.
Let me see if I can remember them.
Okay.
Work slowly.
That's right. That's number 1.
Taste.
From
James Brown.
Right.
Taste. The third one is travel often. Mm-hmm. And then the last one is keep it weird.
Yeah.
Keep it weird.
Yeah.
Keep it weird. That right there.
So whenever I'm working with my assistant in the cellar, I always remind him of the 4 tenets before we start to work.
Work slowly. Taste.
Yeah, just like that. Good.
You gotta make sure you gotta say it right. If you're gonna say it, you gotta own it. Travel often. And
keep it
weird. Keep it weird. What are some of the ways we keep it weird?
Ooh, there's lots of ways we keep it weird.
Oh,
that may be inappropriate.
That may be inappropriate.
Go ahead. I like that. I'm sure everybody likes that.
Yeah.
Go ahead. From Robert Kusik, how influential is Chateau Latour to you?
Well, Chateau Latour it's very important to me, mainly for one reason. I worked for 6 years as the international winemaker of mystery for Beringer. And during that time, I was given a consultant to work with me. And it was a guy, Jean-Louis Mandreau. And Jean-Louis Monroe was the winemaker at Chateau Latour for 16 years and is ridiculously funny and ridiculously intelligent. And I learned so much from him. It's scary. And a very special person in my life. He, as he calls himself, is the godless father of my 2 daughters. And Chateau Latour is, I mean, it's a great place. It's the only left bank wine that gets all of my respect.
Oh, so there are left bank wines that get part of your respect, but
I'm a right bank guy. I love the right bank. The left bank, you know, I like.
We might be walking down a path here.
I like the very attractive tour guides in the left bank, but I like the right bank wines more.
That's great.
All right. You know, that's funny that he has a particular distinction when it comes to Bordeaux between 2 sets of regions. And in music composition, there seemed to have been this kind of back and forth between certain regions and certain ideals. Do you have a similar story of, you know, during this period, this group of people was doing this thing and this group of people was doing this? And
I mean, there have been points in music where, you know, it's like people were putting more and more feeling and expression into the music, so that like Wagner was writing these amazing things, and then there was a backlash. Wagner. There was a backlash against that to people who wrote this very minimal like music, and then it got kind of even weirder. It became serial, which is like there was a pattern you have to follow. It's very mathematical, and that music doesn't appeal to me on a heart level, on a soul level, because it's very mathematical. It's kind of cool, but I can't like dive into it for 10 hours a day like I could with Beethoven or Brahms or Wagner or somebody else like that. So I think that's where we make our distinctions. But there are people that their whole life is about that other kind of music, and it's not
breaking down the scale and how it moves from one step. And could you even maybe bring that into winemaking, that there are these group of people that might sort of put winemaking into a very specific, almost like box, and say, okay, this is how we do this and this is how we do that. But in part of your keeping it weird is to break away from that. Is to go from the heart. Thank you, Brian. Wait, you pour me a glass of wine and then. Oh, okay. Look at you, Brian. I see.
No, but I think there are a lot of people that deconstruct wine maybe too much, and in deconstructing the wine, they lose what the terroir is trying to say to them. And it's a simple message. You just need to listen. I think is the thing I would say to those people. I think it's an important beverage. I mean, it wouldn't be as an important beverage in the 3 Judeo-Christian religions as it is if it wasn't an important beverage. But I think people deconstruct it a little too much, and they need to put their ear to the ground a little bit more.
Yeah,
I'm sorry. Look, I watched him have a moment. He's trying to focus on you. He's trying to focus on you, but he's like, oh my God, this wine.
It's one of those hard things.
That's why he's my winemaker.
This is definitely a wine that you can all of a sudden be having a conversation, and then I'm trying I can't focus on anything but this wine.
This is 2011. This was the worst vintage in 30 years.
If this is the worst vintage that you're going to make of this wine, then I really don't know how I'm going to survive afterwards. When your 2013s of this varietal come out, I'm going to be calling you up and saying, Aaron, please give me everything. All your beets are belonging to us.
Yeah, the 2013 of this wine, I'll tell you, we opened the valve and it came out straight. It was so, It was so dark and concentrated. It was crazy. But I find 11 a very appealing vintage just because the wines are so balanced and so elegant and so expressive and beautiful. And to me, I heard people screaming all over the valley about how difficult a vintage it was, and to me, it just looked like a normal vintage in Bordeaux. I mean, it was very, very.
You like challenges anyway.
Yeah,
you like, because this is part of keeping it weird. You're like, what can I do with this? I mean, you are. I've seen other people around you. I spent a really amazing day, I have to say, and I can't describe the whole day to you just because I can't remember it all. But we started at like 6 a.m. and I wanted to see what it was like to be a winemaker. So I followed him around from 6 in the morning, and I had to leave at 4 because I had a rehearsal back in San Francisco. And I was amazed at all that he was doing. And people around you, there was a point somebody was unhappy with something that was happening with one of the wines, and you were like, give it another week. You were totally like relaxed about it, and sure enough, we talked about it later, and everything was fine. He's got a great attitude.
Another question here. We have about a little bit less than 15 minutes left to go from Peter Wilson, and this is for you.
Oh.
Imagine that. This is your show, and she's getting all the questions. So from Peter Wilson again, does Jennifer has 4 or tenants?
Oh, do I have 4 tenants?
Great
for
call.
Playing,
Thank you.
I don't know what it means.
Thank you for bringing that up.
Well, we had the 4 tenants of Pott Wine.
Yeah,
4
Peter,
tenants
I got you back, buddy.
Yeah, right. Beethoven and more Beethoven and wow. Thanks for putting me on the spot.
It's hard.
That is hard to think about. No, I mean, what immediately comes to mind to me though is that in order to really share music from a deep level, you have to actually have the time and the space to think about the music, to feel it, to take walks, to read books, to meditate, to make friends, to drink wine, whatever. Those things help enrich your music making. Mm-hmm. So that's a very important part of my music making. Feeling the music, the overall, the actual vibrations, that's a really big part of my music making. And then choosing great composers to work with, and sharing it with people who really love it. Is that 4?
I like that. No, it's and something as you were going through those, that sprung to mind really quickly. Mm-hmm. And it's something that I, in the wine industry and as a very small winemaker, there's something really special, and I think, Aaron, you would agree with this, that going through the fermentation process and going through harvest is in of itself part of what we do, and those days that you took part of are very Zen-like, and you're tasting and you're going, but then you have to be able to sit back and remove yourself from the actual process of making wine.
Trust the process.
But then also go and taste wines that you're not going to overanalyze, that you're just going to drink. And I'm using that as kind of a springboard into music with you is, are there moments where rather than sitting and practicing and playing and practicing and playing, that you just need to stop and just listen to music,
or go take a walk next to the ocean, or whatever it is that, actually what's amazing is you'll be working on something, and here's how the brain works, right, too, is you're working and you can't conquer that passage you need to learn, and you go do something else, and the next day you sit down, you can play it perfectly because it's somewhere it's still working in you. I mean, those are, those wonderful parts of life. A little bit of a mystery, but I guess the brain is still working on it. Yeah.
Would you agree? What do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's. I was just getting on my trip of the harvest and how cathartic it is.
It is, though. I think the first winemaker I ever worked for taught me the best thing. I'm going to shout out to Matthew Mayer real quick, because if it wasn't for you, this would never have been.
Yeah, Matt.
Because the first few vintages that he had worked at this particular winery in Virginia before I was there and fortunate enough to work with him, every time the fruit came in, he'd immediately process it, immediately get into tank, and immediately start the fermentation. And he always found himself feeling like he was running behind. And by the time I was fortunate enough to work with him, because so much fruit is coming from opposite ends of the state, and you'd be processing fruit until midnight, he would rent a chiller box, that would drive out to the vineyard. He'd pick it first thing in the morning, so it would be but then it'd go into this dark, chilled container and come back to the winery, and it would sit. And then when we came back the next morning, rested as much as we could be and ready to go, the grapes were also ready. And we approached that harvest from a very, consistent, even-keeled, this is what we need to do, this is what we need to go. And I think, you have to approach harvest like that. And I think maybe even have to approach.
There's also the point, and I call it the Henry V moment, where everybody is just ready to go, and they can just go for 48 hours, and you just have to roll with it. With you.
Band of Brothers? Oh, that's
there's that moment too.
I think anybody who's worked at harvest in any winery with more than 2 people has definitely had that Henry moment. We happy few, we band a brother, for he who sheds his blood with me to. Oh gosh. But did you maybe you've got a quartet that you've been working with for almost 18 years now?
17 and a half, yes.
And do you have those moments as a team?
Actually, what's so interesting is we'll sometimes have a performance coming up and we don't feel ready for it. And I've learned to just trust that there are the minutes between now and that performance, that things will just click. When you're on stage, you walk out on stage, you're ready. And also to understand that this moment now is this is the music right now. And tomorrow it'll feel different. And same thing when we record. We've recorded 14 CDs. The minute we walk out of the studio, I'm thinking, I want to do that differently next time. Because it's a moment in time you've captured. Like this is of course this, my music is gone after it's, and this is still sitting there getting better or changing, morphing. So,
Well, would you be kind enough to play us one more? Do you think you can do that?
Yes, get my cello.
One more. You get one more. I love this. We get another piece.
She occasionally plays for me in the cellar while I'm working, which is
I can only imagine what that's
amazing.
Yeah. I think, you know what? I think, Aaron, you and I'm taking
heading for the couch?
I'm heading for the couch.
All right, you head for the couch. I'm not really And since we were speaking of the greats, Bach is one of my favorites. So, and one of Aaron's favorites, too. So.
Bach on.
Bach on. Thank you, Aaron Pott, my friend. What a great night here at ToutSuite Social Club. Thank you again, everybody, for attending, for being here. Thank you to our wonderful audience, all the great questions. Everybody who's logging in. Always remember, check us out, ToutSuite Social Club or ToutSuite.com. And make sure to follow us on Facebook. And thank you to 55 Degrees. Yeah.